You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
See you all here today. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Really? Nobody? I didn't even come prepared to drill you all with tough stuff because there's no beginners here. Nobody? First time? Well, great. So why even be here then? I just say the same thing every week. Have you not figured it out by now? Why show up? What's the reason for being here? Yeah.
Drivers still bother me.
Drivers still bother you. Yeah.
All the way here.
That could be our next program. Drivers still bother us.
All the way here, we were doing all that stuff, and I'm thinking, and we're heading to the temple, so we want to do that.
Yeah.
Stop at stop signs. Yeah, right.
Hey.
I was just answering this question with my daughter on the phone, why do I come here? And prior to coming here every Saturday, I go to Torah study, which is very stimulating and intense.
Yeah.
And then I come here, and it's just,
Settle.
quiet and settle.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I come here.
So you were with two of my favorite people this morning, Rabbi Marty. Well, you weren't with Deborah. But...
It wasn't Marty, it was Deborah.
Oh, okay.
Not one of your favorite people.
How's Deborah doing?
She's great. She'll be here next week. I don't know if she'll come here, but I'll try.
Us Jews, we're tough ones to crack, you know. What else? Why show up here? Yeah.
Because I noticed that we're using meditation to isolate instead of connect with others.
Say that again?
We're using meditation to isolate more than connect with the Sangha or community with.
Huh. Great point. And when I say don't use meditation as an escape, that's kind of what I'm talking about. In one way, yeah. For those virtually maybe didn't hear, was the comment was that Justin's been using meditation to isolate and not to connect. And there's a big difference in using meditation to isolate and connecting with Sangha. And the reality is for a lot of people early on, we think, well, everything is hectic and my life's a mess, I'm stressed out, I'm angry, I'm dealing with whatever it might be. So I'm going to use meditation to kind of get quiet and isolate myself. And then you're creating this safe little perfect bubble. But you can't stay in that safe little perfect bubble forever. You have to go back into community. And that's where the challenge is, where they are. And when you surround yourself ideally with, such a kind group of people that are in the room here today, then it makes things a lot easier. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. What else? Yeah.
I look at the news occasionally. It's a crazy world.
Yes. Meaning?
It's a crazy world.
And so what does that do to you?
It affects me differently at different times.
How so?
Well, sometimes I'm expansive, and I take too much in and it affects me.
Yeah,
And other times I realize that the teachings that I've learned a lot directly through this Sangha, just pull it all in. And as you were saying last week, just deal with your own stuff.
yeah. Yeah, the news can trigger you. Definitely. Drivers trigger you. Family can trigger you. So, what else? Why show up?
I don't like myself or my place in the world.
Yeah. I don't like myself, or did you say, or your place in the world? Yeah. So I don't like myself or my place in the world. Super common. Very, very common. I didn't like myself at all when I started this journey. I like myself a tiny bit more now, so it's all right. Yeah. It can be harsh when you honestly look at yourself. The way you think, the way you act, the way you speak. If you honestly look at that, you can become pretty critical of that. And that creates an opportunity where potentially you don't like that. But then that creates the opportunity to work through change. So, yeah, another hand, I think, somewhere. Oh, I just see your hand.
I was gonna say consistency and structure, some sort of a kind of forgiving discipline,
What was the last part?
like a forgiving discipline. like
Forgiving discipline, yeah.
having a structure around it.
Consistency, structure, super important also. Yeah, a lot of, you'll see, obviously, a lot of Buddhist teachings share different ways, but one of the kind of common expressions or things you'll hear is that the Buddha said the same thing 84,000 different ways. And ultimately, the Buddhist teachings don't differ all that much. It's really the same thing. It's just said different ways to remind us that we still have work to do. And to me, I think it's a metaphor really for the fact that there's, again, a metaphor, 84,000 different types of people. So we're all going to respond to different things differently. We're going to respond to hearing different things differently. We're talking about Zen mind, beginner mind somewhere over the last week, and someone made a comment, actually it was last Saturday afternoon, and someone made a comment. She said that, she could read it one week and then read it a week later, and the exact same line will just strike her completely differently. And I think Buddhist teachings really are that way, that depending upon where our mind is at, where our heart's at, where our willingness to open up to things are at, will create situations for us to respond differently. So, yeah, anything else before we do a meditation anyone want to share? Why show up? All right, so we'll start with the meditation practice. Also, good morning to all of you who are joining virtually. Thanks for saying hello. Nice to see you all here. Feel free as you are to chime in on the chat box there somewhere. When we open up to questions, you'll have an opportunity there to share and ask questions as well. So with meditation practice, just a few things before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps sliding the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Relaxing shoulders. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. All we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy, not fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment, which very often is incredibly difficult. And it's learning to be with that present moment as it arises, and not running from it, not escaping to something or someone, but learning to be with it and understanding the impermanence of all of it, meaning it will change. But very, very often unpleasant feelings, unpleasant thoughts, unpleasant sensations arise, and we quickly run from it to something or someone or somewhere. But if we sit and we see the unpleasant sensation, unpleasant thought, unpleasant feeling, and we see it with some ultimate wisdom, we see the impermanence of it, that it will change. But very often we haven't sat with it long enough to let it change. We've quickly gone to do something that in most cases, many cases, very often, just makes things worse. First thing Buddha said, life is filled with dukkha, suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. But for some reason, we just don't want to be okay with that. That's the first thing he said. You're going to suffer. Yet the moment suffering arises, you're immediately trying to take it away. Instead of looking at, well, wait a minute, why is this even arising to begin with? And watch it as it passes. And then returns. And then passes, and then returns. That's the cycle. That's what happens. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter. And being kind doesn't mean you let people take advantage of you. Doesn't mean you become a pushover. Doesn't mean you let people step on you, metaphorically speaking. Being kind is also a sign of tremendous strength. And very often is incredibly fierce. It might not be perceived that way. Kindness isn't just telling everybody what they want to hear. Kindness isn't making sure everybody likes you. Kindness very often involves brutal honesty. And that brutal honesty isn't always received so well. But being honest is, I think, the kindest thing one can do. So, with that, I'll pause. For me, I'd rather just respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we used the rest of our brief time this morning for that. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. Nice to sit with you all here. Feel free to share anything on the screen, and I'll do my best to read it and respond there as well. So open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with.
Just want to share an experience I had this morning. I had a neighbor, I was putting garbage cans away, cleaning garbage cans, mostly. And I had a neighbor come out to tell me how to clean garbage cans. I do it this way, I do it that way. And I was a little pressed for time, and the dog was running wild. And I said to myself, just be here with it. I really wanted to say, I don't have time for this. And then I realized, as she spoke, she is here, her mother is in Utah, and she expects her mother to pass away today. She needed someone to share that with. And that little bit of patience on my part turned into a conversation that was, I think, something she needed. And honestly, I got to share an experience with her through that as well. So what started off as an annoyance, and we have, this is my son next to me, we have
Hi,
a
son.
whiteboard in our house where for years, the biggest thing written on it is be kind. And that was going through my head while she was telling me how to clean the garbage cans. And the gift of that was this really shared human experience of someone this is a single point in time for her and her life as she contemplates what is happening and her distance from it and the need to talk it through with another person. She is a woman who lives with cats.
Yeah.
And the cats listen, they're over for this. And so it was just a little daily reminder that a little bit of patience, a little bit of kindness, you don't know what's on the other side of that. It's worth taking if I walked away and it was only a conversation about garbage cans, okay, I would have, 10 minutes of my life, but instead it really became this gift on the other side.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for sharing. Just to, show us if we sit and just listen, never know what it can do. And even if it was just about trash cans, maybe you would have learned better ways to clean the trash cans. What else? Thoughts? So there's a question here. I wanted to ask at some point, what's the view and practice like law of attraction? I'm always dependent upon where you are, I'm always kind of the worst guy to ask these law of attraction, Eckhart Tolle, New Age type stuff, especially if you're into that, because I'm just not a fan of it. Potentially, again, this is just one sentence, there's no expression, we can't have a dialogue really, so I don't know what's behind it, but I'm not a fan of, I'm not even suggesting that you're asking this, but I'm not a fan of, oh wait, hang on, there's 2 more paragraphs. Be patient. After listening to Buddha send traction, Others could be a trap. Attempting to manipulate cosmic energies. Buddha talked about not being attached, how important this is. And okay, I'm just going to ramble, as opposed to the other rambling I do. Again, I understand this isn't the nature of it, but let me just finish that first thought I had. So if I sit here all day long and I just think Ferrari, red Ferrari, the red Ferrari, in all likelihood, is not showing up outside this temple for me to get in and, drive it. I don't like putting law in front of the word attraction. It just seems very heavy to me. Eckhart Tolle, New Age stuff, all that kind of, if it works for you, that's great. You could do all the kind, wonderful things in the world, and miserable experiences could show up. You could do all the miserable things in the world, and wonderful experiences in people could show up. So, what I am a fan of is karma, which isn't getting what you deserve. It's not what goes around comes around. It's not like if you do good, you're going to get good. Karma is simply action. And what that means is we generate karma, action, through our thoughts, our words, and our physical deeds throughout the day. And this creates our reality. But just because I think kind thoughts and speak kind words and do good deeds, if I did that all day long, that doesn't mean kind, wonderful things are going to happen. So, karma is simply the law of cause and effect. But that doesn't mean that there's any sort of guarantee that your actions are going to bring specific actions into play. It just means that there's a causal relationship between all actions. But defining those actions as good, bad, or otherwise, I think it's a little messy. So, then there's a sorry, ha ha ha, after my initial comment of I'm the wrong person to ask, I'm guessing. But hopefully that's helpful. I just am very cautious, especially when people are new maybe to Buddhism or meditation or things like that, that it's not manifesting. And when I hear law of attraction, I think of manifestation and think positive thoughts, work hard, hope that good things will happen. And those things are all very practical and healthy to an extent. But the danger is all this positive manifestation stuff you're doing, what happens if it doesn't work? So you will create things from your actions. My suggestion from a practice standpoint is to remove any sort of meaning or labeling, I should say, of what occurs. Just the law of cause and effect. Things happen. That's it. Stuff just happens. What else? Yeah, Justin.
Just kind of a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So like, a kind of way of thinking about karma that I have found helpful to me, and that is prevalent, like the kind of tradition where I've been doing a lot of reading, is not that you get what you want, but you get what you need to wake up if you'll take advantage of it. So in that case, it is all wonderful stuff. You just can't see it.
Yeah.
Is that like am I in ballpark?
I think, again, that's a wonderful practice. We can psychologically spin it however we want, right? And like you said, you get what you need to wake up. So what that tells me is what you're saying is you are recognizing that whatever arises in your life, whether it's, whether we label it as good or bad, painful, harmful, joyful, whatever it is, that's what you're working with at that moment.
Yeah.
So and that's the reality. you are seeing what's arising in your life and saying, this is what I'm going to work with in this moment. And you were telling yourself, this is what I need to experience in this moment, which is a very healthy way to observe things, because we know that the things that arise are not always going to be pleasant, right? There's a follow-up comment from the same person here that says, specifically because those methods are well advertised and monetized, the path of opening the heart is not. So, yeah, I would even just kind of throw back, like, it's not necessarily getting what you need, because you're still like saying, okay, well, this crap is showing up in my life. I need this to be able to work through it. It's just what's showing up. Whether you need it or not is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's cyclical, right? Like,
Yeah, it's just stuff that happens. But as long as we have an open mind to experiencing it and being with it, I think that's really beneficial, for sure. Yeah. What else? Go ahead. Yeah.
I may have asked this before in the
Yeah.
past, but going back to what you said earlier about when you're in pain and you find yourself like running towards somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody or something that's harmful for yourself. You said the thing is to sit with it and find, I don't know if you said the source or, but how did you find that source?
Yeah. So your question is around what I referenced earlier, that when you experience pain, unpleasant thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever they may be, what I said earlier was to sit with it and understand. You said source, I said cause. Similar idea. And your question is how, right? How do you find the cause? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also recognize not to immediately run.
Well, the practice of not immediately running to someone, something, somewhere is literally just physically not moving. You can't run to someone. You can't run to a drug, to a drink, to a person, to a place if you don't move. Unless it's already within arm's length of you. I just, wanted a little asterisk in there. And if it is within arm's length of you, then, remove it further away. But if you physically don't move, I'll get back to the cause part in a minute, but whatever we would turn to, person, place, or things, if we physically don't move, we can't go there, right? Does that make sense? So that's the first step, or second step, or part of it. But the cause of it is really just basic Buddhist teachings of understanding that all dukkha, all suffering, all discomfort, all angst, all displeasure comes from greed, anger, and ignorance. So begin to look at what we're not being okay, what we're not feeling okay with. Is there greed involved? Is there anger involved? Is there ignorance involved? Ignorance is tricky because it asks us to look at, am I ignoring the truth? Meaning this is reality. And am I stuck in perceiving a situation very differently from how it actually is? Most often, the answer to that is yes. And that's why, again, going back to my earlier comment about Buddhist teachings, 84,000 ways, a lot of great Buddhist teachers, scholars, whatever, will tell you that all of the Buddhist teachings for 45 years are in the Four Noble Truths. That's it. And the second noble truth is the cause of our suffering: greed, anger, ignorance. So ask ourselves, am I being greedy? Do I want more? Do I want different? Am I not okay with how things are? Very often, yes. Anger. Am I angry at how things are? Do I not like how it is? Am I angry at somebody else? Am I angry at myself? Very often, Yes. Ignorance. What am I ignoring? What story am I stuck in? What story is in my head about how bad things are and how bad they are and how bad I am? That's the ignorance. So your cause is right there. If you find a situation that you cannot tie to those three things, at least one of those three things, call me. But I don't expect my phone to ring. I think the Buddha was a pretty smart dude. And I think his basic core teachings are brilliant. They just require us to be honest. Am I really angry at myself or someone else? Am I really wanting it to have worked out differently and I'm not okay with it? Do I really want them to be different from who they are? What reality can I not sit with? And that's uncomfortable, right? I mean, the look on your face says uncomfortable, and I'm just walking you through random scenarios in my head, right? It's uncomfortable. So that feeling of discomfort, of like, oh, this sucks, that is the moment that you want to get up and run. And that is the moment you sit and breathe, and you feel that discomfort, you feel that angst, you see the greed, anger, ignorance. And you begin to learn to apply generosity to overcome greed, compassion to overcome anger, and wisdom to overcome ignorance. But before you even get there, you have to see it honestly and sit with it. And don't move. Yeah. Does that help? Yeah. So there's a question here. I appreciate being okay with how things are, but it's always a but. I haven't even read the rest of the sentence yet. I don't even need to read the rest of the sentence. But what about when things are bad and need to change? As opposed to when being okay with the way things are when they're good, because those are good. We're only talking about being okay with the way things are when they're bad. We're not talking about being okay with the way things are when they're good. None of you are here because you're okay with the way things are when they're all good. Nobody shows up for that stuff, right? And need to change. Can you talk about how to manage that balance? Yeah, so it really is, it's a good question. It really is understanding that we will view so many things in our life as bad. And Buddhist teachings is not about good or bad. It goes back to what I talked about earlier. It's the reality that things happen. We then create a story that says good or bad. And we have an aversion to bad, so we run away from it. We want good, so we seek and crave and desire that. So we're seeking, craving, desiring pleasure, and we're running from discomfort. Now, always, and I say this probably once a week, the asterisk is, this doesn't mean that if you're in relationships, whether they're intimate or just, family, whatever it might be, that are incredibly dangerous, unsafe, physically, mentally, emotionally abusive. I'm not suggesting at all that you stay in those situations. Remove yourself from those situations. But it's not about labeling these things as good or bad. It's about recognizing what is harmful. If you're in a situation that is incredibly harmful, then move, then leave. But then all the excuses come in. Well, what about this? What about that? Well, then stay. But understand that you're putting yourself in danger. These are choices that we make. And yes, there is a balance. And that balance is different for everybody in every place and every time. There's no page 17 that says this is exactly when you know what the balance is. So I can't really respond to that. But if things are unsafe, it was probably 15 years ago in prison. I'll never forget a guy, it was actually written on the wall, but this guy was talking about nothing changes if nothing changes. I thought it was one of the most brilliant things I'd ever heard. So simple. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you are stuck, if things aren't working, if you're unhappy, and you're doing the same thing day in and day out, what's going to change? That's the Einstein quote. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, it's the definition of insanity. And so many people do that. We do the same things over and over and over. And then we come to a meditation once a week and we're like, how come my life still sucks? What are you doing outside of here? This one little hour of your week will not change your life. Well, it will, but really slowly. Right? How many of you seen Shawshank Redemption? Probably my all-time favorite movie, right? How did he break through that wall? One little pebble at a time.
20 years.
For 20 years. Now, if you do this stuff once a week for an hour for the next 20 years, that's like one little pebble at a time. You'll get there eventually, but you don't need to do it a pebble at a time. If things in your life are rough, there's a strong correlation to how miserable your life is to how much you must change. If your life is complete disaster, then you need a dump truck to dig up all that dirt. If your life is pretty good, then yeah, you can keep going a few pebbles at a time, making little changes here and there. Absolutely. If you cruise around all day long and you're pretty happy and comfortable and safe and healthy and all that, then yeah, a little bit. Kind of like fine tuning, But if things are a mess, then it requires drastic change. I don't know any other way to see it. And I know that personally from experience. My life, I completely blew up my entire life 20 years ago. Drastic change. Completely left everything in my life. The way of life, the people I spent time with, the places I went to, the country I lived in. Completely walked away from everything. To have nothing. And that nothing was everything. But my first master, she said, Jeff, you work so hard to make so much money to buy so many things. If you didn't have so many things, you wouldn't need so much money, you wouldn't have to work so hard. She told me that in 2003. So I left my big shot consulting career, making a lot of money, buying a lot of stuff, having lots of houses and cars and everything else that comes with that. Shipped off to a monastery in Taiwan in 2005 with nothing but a robe and no money, no keys, no wallet, no phone, nothing. But boy, was I finally happy. All that stuff made me miserable. Having nothing brought me joy. And then you find a balance. So, yeah.
It's a little bit contradictory to me to say change and then sit with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like this uncomfortable dukkha and sit with it. And then the other thing you're saying is,
Yes.
if it's not worth it, working, change, and they're
I got
a bit contradictory.
Yeah, great question. I'll close with this thought. So what your question is, it sounds like a bit of a contradiction, which let me say this first, even though I will actually address this contradiction, I think for clarity, much of Buddhist practice is a complete paradox and living contradiction. So let me say that first. But to address, I think from a clarity standpoint, at least in the message I was sharing, when you recognize discomfort, and I'm saying to sit with it, then I'm saying change. That's where you're seeing this contradiction. What I mean by that, to clarify, is if what you're sitting with, the discomfort, if you see it, sit with it. But if every single day of your life, you're sitting with the same discomfort, you should probably change something. So you're no longer sitting with that discomfort. In other words, that discomfort doesn't arise anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but wouldn't this be automatic? You
No.
wouldn't have to really do something. It would just happen if you're sitting with it. That's
No.
my idea.
That's a very unhealthy idea to have.
Well, I mean, it would just occur because my state would change and I would be different. I can't explain it.
No, I think you're explaining it very well.
Rather than forcing it in.
I think I'm just doing a poor job of getting you to see what I'm getting at. So let's just say, for me, it's always just real life examples make it easier. So I grew up a really angry person, right? One of my favorite expressions is an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator, okay? So growing up angry, if I have anger and I sit with that and I don't act on the anger and I allow myself to settle, great. Next day, I'm angry again. I'm going to sit again. I'm going to allow myself to settle. Next day, you know what's there? More anger. So I've just spent the next 20 years getting angry every single day and calming it down by sitting with it. This is like popping 2 Advil every single day to get rid of a headache, instead of looking at why are you getting the headache to begin with. That's where the change needs to occur. So you're not just sitting with the same stuff. The stuff that is causing you to suffer, we have to understand what it is, so then we can make changes so it stops arising. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I see your point of view too.
Yeah. Yeah, just a view. And according to Thich Nhat Hanh, all views are wrong, so we're good. Joe, and then we'll close.
Yeah, talking about stigma. So back in the 80s during the AIDS epidemic, and I was 3 years of, being positive and worrying about dying, I almost stepped in front of a bus because I was obsessed with dying. And I realized, oh, okay, stop and sit with it. And then I read something that said, it was by a person who was positive, and he said, how do you live with a monster? I tried denying its existence and it kept raising its ugly head. I learned to coexist and eat from the same bowl. And I thought about that in terms of the ego. And then from that place of sitting with it, I found the gifts that it was giving me. Like I had a conversation with the virus and I hadn't appreciated the wake up that I got from it. I hadn't appreciated the value of time that I got from it. And then that shifted my life. And I wasn't worrying about dying. I'm still sitting here, but it was, quote, a horrific time, but it was a mitzvah in a way for me, a blessing in disguise because I woke up. Yeah. So whenever I hear somebody talk about I have a disease or cancer, I don't see it the same way. I see impermanence and I see it, and I don't mean that for anyone who's sitting with a disease, but for me, what am I being called to be or see and sit with myself?
Right. And that actually reminds me similar to what Justin was saying earlier about seeing what arises in our lives and how we face it, how we approach it, and how we deal with it.
Right. But, the idea that this virus is out to get me, that virus wasn't even thinking about me. You know what I mean? It wasn't personal.
Right.
It was just trying to have a life.
Yeah.
And we coexisted.
Yeah.
And things happened. Did it happen? Did medicine come because I thought that? No, it just happened.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for sharing. Glad you're still here.
Yeah, me too.
All right, we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. Specifically at this time, Molly and her mother during her pain and suffering. All right, so a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple about 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who leave, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets a handful of times a week. So anyone dealing addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything for that matter, there's always something going on with that. We do have some really cool kind of new changes and things happening around temple. Wednesday night now, she started last week, Bettina is leading a 4 Foundations of Mindfulness, the 4 Brahma Viharas practice every Wednesday night. She's amazing. For those who are here, you saw it, but really beautiful. So that's every Wednesday at 7. Every Thursday at 7, Dharma Bum Basics continues, but we brought it back to the original intention of it, which is really a circle kind of setting, which was really beautiful to sit with 20-something people in a circle and allow everybody to kind of share their approach to Buddhist practice and these experiences. So that's every Thursday at 7. We also have we've teased everybody with these announcements, and yes, I recognize that when you click you're interested in a residential retreat, it just takes you to the website with nothing more. So if you were one of those people, we understand. But starting in probably the beginning of August, we will start our residential retreat program. So this will be an opportunity for anybody brave enough, wise enough, foolish enough, crazy enough, whatever words you want to put in front of it, to actually reside and live here at the Dharma Bum Temple for a week. The loose outline is it'll start on a Friday afternoon, and you'll stay until the following Friday afternoon. There will be 3 to 4 of you who will reside here. The vision from day one, before we even bought this place 7 years ago, was to use it for residential retreats. And lots of things happen, pandemic happens, lots of life happens, and now we're finally in a beautiful place to start a residential retreat program. So again, they'll be week long. Lots of details will come out soon, but I'm just kind of planting that seed for people that might feel like staying here for a week to see what that's all about. So so good luck with all that. I would imagine there'll be some people outside sweeping and cleaning up if anybody wants to stick around. We do not have a cleaning crew at the temple. We are it. So thanks all for helping out with that. Be well. Buddha Fear is downstairs if you need anything. Thank you all.